Good morning, guys. We're working on the digital readout again today, and I said I was remounting all my scales, and I had an individual ask if I would show the way I was going to mount them. So it's going to vary from lathe to lathe, and this is what I did years and years ago. I'll show you the way I had them mounted and kind of explain my thinking with it, and then I'll tell you what I plan on doing. So we'll just go from there. So what I originally did for my cross feed, and you're not going to be able to see all of it because I had it mounted back here in the back end, and I think part of that view is blocked. So this is the scale I had back here, and I had it mounted right about like this, right in that configuration there, except I think it was turned around the other way. So anyway, and I may turn it around. The reason it's this way is because I routed my cable out the back. You can hot melt glue them to the top, and that works well, but then my cables are going off that way rather than the other way around. So not really going to matter for this. You got space constraints is the main problem. And the way I had this mounted was clear on the back of or on the side, but at the back end of the taper attachment, I had this bracket mounted like this right here. And then I had spacers on the back side of it to space it off to the side. And that was the fixed portion of it, of the scale, and then the scale itself, or the bar itself, is what traverses back and forth. And the way I had that mounted was I had this bracket, this is one of the end brackets that come with it, and I think I must have cut down a piece of angle iron, so this would have fit on the end and clamped. I'm going to do things differently this time than that. I think I'm probably going to drill this and run a screw down through, because this is not a real long-term good solution. But then I had this bar mounted to let me get it backed out here just a little bit more. I had it mounted to the cover right here, and I drilled and tapped it so that this bracket set on here just like this. Clears over the traverse portion of it. Now the downside to this is if you have it backed up, had it backed up too far like here, and you tried to bring your tailstock up, why that would interfere. So if you're running your tailstock in close, you had to have it in this position or a little bit farther so that it didn't interfere with the base of the tailstock going back and forth. So that's the way I had that mounted. I'm going to do the same basic mounting system, except I'm going to shield it better. We'll probably build us a new little bracket that sets up here. We're going to drill this so that they drill, and whether I drill and tap it, whether I drill it, put a nut on it, whatever, so that that's a permanent fixture on there, because I have on occasion had this pull out. So didn't like that solution. So, and we can do a little bit better. I want to cover both of these scales a little bit more. And the Z-axis scale is mounted on the back side of the bed. I'm not going to do anything with it right now. When I transfer everything over to the other lathe, once we get it rebuilt, why I may mount that differently. I probably will mount it differently, but I don't know exactly what the setup's going to be. This setup will probably stay the same once it gets transferred over to the other Sheldon lathe. Now the other Sheldon doesn't have a taper attachment, and these were supposedly fitted at the factory and were tough to retrofit and everything. I plan on retrofitting that taper attachment over onto the other lathe, since this lathe will be dedicated as a turret machine. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of aluminum flat bar probably, and I contemplated how I wanted to mount this. I thought maybe I wanted to mount it in this orientation, or even this orientation. Not really enough room to clear anything without raising it up. So I'm probably going to mount it the same way, as low profile as I can. And I'm going to run a piece of aluminum flat stock on the back side, I think, and then I'll form a cover to go over the top. So it'll be open on the back side, but we'll be pretty well protected, I think. So that's my plan for doing that. So we'll see how it works out. Things may change. But anyway, that's the way I plan on doing that. I plan on mounting the same type of cover over the compound angle here, or the compound too. So the way I had the compound mounted is it was mounted in, well, it would have been mounted in with this side out. I don't know if it was this way or if it was reversed the other way too. But nonetheless, what I did with it is I had this little bracket that I made up, and it would have been mounted the other way. It would have been mounted like this originally. And I had this little bracket on the back of it, so it screwed right to the back of the scale body. and this is going to be tough to see because it's dark down here, but it mounted right here. There again, standoffs to move it back a little bit, and one screw right here into the base of the slide assembly there, and then I've got two more out here on the compound itself, on the top portion of the compound, that slid it back and forth. So as you move the compound away, it did one of these type of thing. There again, I'm going to do the same basic thing with this. The things that I am going to change is I'm going to space it out farther this way. Now that's a compromise too. Once you get the tailstock up here close to it, why, there's the potential to foul things. But I want it back far enough so that I can get in here and adjust the gibs. Now I may change out gib screws so that I've got a socket head or a socket head set screw in there to adjust, so I can reach in behind with a probably shortened up Allen wrench and then a nut to get in here. The way it was mounted before, it was mounted in pretty tight and I couldn't adjust the gibs. So those are the changes I'm going to make. There again, same thing, plate on the back to protect the back side of it, little thing coming out over the top, very similar to what we see on the milling machine, but they're a cover like this, so they set over the top. So I'll do something very similar to that, so it protects it. You know, it won't be nearly this big, won't be nearly that deep, but we'll do something very similar to the same thing. Now for on the compound, when you mount them, you still have to have some cable management for this cable. Once they get on back, and they need to be independent from both the cross light and the compound, because as you move the compound and as you change angle, why, the length of this that's up here on top is going to change too. What I had done originally is I built me a little bracket or a little guide that screws right down there on top. It was just a piece of tubing that I welded two little brackets to, slid out the sides so I could get the standard cable back in and out of it right, and it mounted right there so I could run my cable through it, and it was smaller cable, you know, without this sheathing on it. So as I changed the angle of the compound or moved the compound in or out, the cable actually slid back and forth through there. So that protected it there on top, gave it a little bit of guidance so it wasn't just flopping all over the place, and it actually worked really well. So I will incorporate something similar to that, I'm sure, in this back bracketry here, so that I can still move it back and forth. So anyway, that's what it is. I'm not going to show a whole lot of this because I'm cleaning a little bit. I'm greasy, oily, and I don't want to get the camera all gunky and messed up. All right, well, I think I've got something here for this first mounting, for this first scale anyway, for the compound. So I've been cleaning stuff up a little bit. Now, mounting before I showed you, I was drilled here, and then down here. And this is what I've come up with for mounting, and this may change slightly, but we've got just a plate like this, and I've got some standoffs, and I may make some permanent spacers here. I may just space it off with these nuts. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, but there's a little bit of adjustment there, and I can do some other goofy stuff if I need to. So anyway, this is what I've come up with so far. So anyway, the way these go on, and I don't have the stud built to go from there to there yet. I don't think I've got a long enough one because I spaced this out quite a bit more than what I had before. So in essence, this one's going to mount here like this. This one's going to mount here like this. And I may trim this back a little bit farther. I may make some adjustments to it. I'm not sure yet, but it looks like it's going to be a fairly good mounting solution for me. But we're going to end up with something that looks like it's about a 1/2 inch spaced off of there. A 1/2 inch spaced off of there. And let's lock that down right there, because I think that's where we want to be. Looks pretty good. So that will mount right there like that. And then to protect it, what I've come up with is this little gizzy right here, and it's going to set right on over the top like that. And we've got 4 632 button head cap screws that are going to go in the back. If I can get it on here, I haven't oh, that may still interfere with the compound. I may not be able to get those screws in there, which is why I put these holes here so I can actually mount the whole assembly on there. So when we finally get it done, we may have to, I might have to go back and put this cover on first. See if we can get it started here anyway. It's not wanting to start. Yeah, we'll have to assemble a little dust cover before we do it, but I think that will protect it enough to where we're not going to have to worry about scales not. And then what we'll do is we'll channel it out over here some way. I don't know exactly what we're going to do, but the compound will actually be swiveled around. For the most part, usually it'll be at our 29 degrees here. And we'll have to set it where it's actually going to go, but it's going to be someplace in that neighborhood. And we'll run our cabling across here some way. We may have to, I don't know exactly how we'll shield that or what we'll do with that. But then it plugs into the digital readout up here. I don't know if you can see that readout or not. Let me move this up a little bit. There's our digital readout. And this one we don't have a sort of why we don't have a scale hooked up to that, so we're not getting anything there. But the way it's set up to sum them right now, so when we move the compound in or out, why it will also position where we're at, where our tool tip is at our z-axis, or how much we've moved, and it figures in the y-axis too when we've got it there. See, right now I'm getting a little bit of jitter on this, and we didn't have that before. What happens if we power up the lathe here? See if that settles it, because we didn't have, I've always been real happy. Yeah, see, now that seems to stabilize it with that. So that's what we end up with. I don't know if you can't see both the digital readout and the scale from there. So we'll have to check and see. Now we may have to have a problem with that interfering with the tailstock. So if we run the tailstock all the way up here, and no, that doesn't seem to interfere. So at that position anyway. I don't think that'll be an issue. We'll just have to make sure that we've got our tailstock set back off a little bit. But that's the problem you get on a lathe this size, or any of these size lathes. You have the potential for some interference in there, one place or another. I've probably lost a little bit from where I had it mounted before, but that's kind of the breaks of what we're dealing with. So I think that'll be acceptable. So anyway, with it running, we're nice and stable. I'm really happy with the, I guess I didn't move this down for you. With this all the way up here, we've got clearance to about there, and we can run our compound in. We can't go in a whole lot more with our cross slide, but that's going to be plenty far. So I think that'll work for us. So anyway, that's what we got. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm about to call it a day. We'll get around and set the cross slide fittings up tomorrow. We're going to build it basically the same, except it'll be laying down, and I'm not sure exactly how, because our base will be flat here. So we'll probably come up over the top and maybe just angle a little bit. We'll probably be open on the back side. So anyway, it's more protected than what it was. Hopefully it's not too fragile, and it'll set up there and do a good job. So maybe end this one here and do one more little video on this one as we're building the cross slide and then final installation and all the final hookup. Anyway, hopefully you find that a little bit interesting. Comments, suggestions, leave them in the comment section for me below. And as always, guys, thanks for taking the time to watch.